The train had been moving west for 3 days when Clara Whitmore finally stopped looking at the passing landscape. At first, she had watched everything with wonder. The green fields of Missouri had slowly disappeared behind her. Forests had become open plains, and the plains had gradually turned into dry stretches of earth, broken by distant hills. She had never traveled this far from home before. Every mile carried her farther from the life she had known and closer to the future she had spent almost a year imagining. Her hands rested tightly around a small leather suitcase. Inside it were 3 dresses, a Bible belonging to her mother, a few personal belongings, and a bundle of letters tied together with a faded blue ribbon. The letters were from Elias Morgan. Clara had read them so many times that she could almost remember every sentence. Elias had written about his ranch in the Arizona Territory. He described the wide sky, the red mountains, the horses running across the open land, and the evenings when the sunset turned the desert gold. Most importantly, he had written about the home they would build together. Clara had never met Elias, yet she believed she knew him. His letters had been patient and respectful. He never spoke to her as though she were property being delivered to him. Instead, he asked about her interests, her dreams, and the things she feared. One letter had contained a sentence Clara had read dozens of times. "I cannot promise you an easy life, Clara, but I can promise that you will never face it alone." That promise was the reason she had boarded the train. Now, as the train slowed near the tiny frontier station, Clara's heart began beating faster. She carefully checked her reflection in the window. Her chestnut brown hair was pinned beneath a modest hat. Her cream-colored traveling dress was slightly wrinkled after days on the train, but she had tried to keep herself presentable. She touched the photograph in her pocket. Elias had sent it months earlier. She looked at his face and smiled nervously. "Just a few more minutes," she whispered. The train finally stopped. Clara stepped onto the wooden platform. She looked around. There were only a few people waiting. A freight worker, 2 ranch hands, an elderly woman, a man standing beside a dark horse. Clara searched for the face from the photograph. She expected Elias to be holding his hat. Perhaps he would smile. Perhaps he would say her name. Instead, the unfamiliar man walked toward her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a dark frontier coat. His black hair was slightly windblown, and a short beard covered his jaw. He looked at her suitcase, then at her face. "Miss Whitmore?" Clara smiled with relief. "Yes." The man removed his hat. "My name is Nathan Morgan." Her smile slowly disappeared. "The brother of Elias?" Nathan nodded. Clara looked beyond him. "Where is he?" Nathan's expression changed. For several seconds, he said nothing. That silence frightened her more than any answer could have. Finally, Nathan lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry." Clara stared at him. "What happened?" Nathan swallowed. "Elias died 3 weeks ago." The world seemed to become completely silent. Clara heard the wind. She heard a horse moving behind her. But everything else disappeared. "No." Nathan said nothing. She shook her head. "That can't be right. He was thrown from his horse during a storm." Clara tightened her fingers around the photograph. "You must be mistaken." "I wish I were." Her eyes filled with tears. "He knew I was coming." "I know. He promised he'd meet me." Nathan looked at her with sorrow. "He wanted to." Clara looked down at the photograph. The man she had crossed hundreds of miles to marry was dead. The future she had imagined had disappeared before she had even reached it. Nathan offered to take her back east, but Clara had already spent most of her money on the journey. There was no comfortable home waiting for her. Her mother was gone. Her father had died years earlier. The relatives who remained had made it clear that she was not welcome. She had believed Elias was her new beginning. Now she had nowhere to go. Nathan seemed to understand. "You can stay at the ranch for a while," he said. Clara looked at him. I don't want charity. It's not charity. Then what is it? Nathan hesitated. Elias promised you a home. Those words broke through her defenses. She nodded. Then I will see his home. The journey to Morgan Ranch took nearly 2 hours. Neither spoke much. Clara watched the Arizona landscape pass by. The land was beautiful, but harsh. There were no familiar roads, no crowded towns, no comforting sounds of home. Only mountains, dry grass, distant mesas, and endless sky. When they finally reached the ranch, Clara's heart sank. It was smaller than she had imagined. The main house was old but sturdy. A barn stood nearby. Several horses rested in the corral. A few ranch hands were repairing a fence. Nathan stopped the wagon. Clara stepped down. For a moment she simply stood there. This is where Elias lived? Nathan nodded. He was born here. Clara looked toward the house. Where is his room? Nathan pointed toward the upstairs window. Clara did not go inside immediately. Instead, she walked toward the barn. A large chestnut horse stood inside. Nathan noticed her staring. That's Copper. Clara touched the animal's neck. Elias wrote about him. Nathan looked surprised. He did? He said Copper was stubborn. For the first time, Nathan almost smiled. That sounds like Elias. Clara smiled through her tears. Then she noticed something strange. A small fenced section of land sat beside the house. The earth had been freshly turned. There were wooden stakes arranged in neat rows. What is that? Nathan looked away. He was going to plant flowers. For me? Nathan nodded. He said you loved wildflowers. Clara walked into the garden. She slowly knelt. Her fingers touched the dark soil. She imagined Elias preparing this place while writing letters to her. He had believed she would arrive. He had believed there would be time. A tear fell onto the earth. Nathan stood several feet away, giving her privacy. That evening, Clara was given Elias's room. She sat on the edge of the bed. His coat still hung beside the door. His boots were beneath the chair. Everything felt untouched. It was as though Elias might walk through the door at any moment. Clara opened her suitcase and removed the bundle of letters. She untied the ribbon. The first letter was dated almost a year earlier. She read it again. I hope you will see this place and decide it can be home. Clara pressed the letter against her chest. Then she cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. She simply sat in the darkness and mourned a man she had never physically met, but had somehow come to love. The next morning, Clara decided she would not spend her days grieving helplessly. If Elias had intended to give her a home, she would at least try to understand what he had left behind. She began helping Mrs. Bell, the ranch's elderly cook. She organized the pantry. She cleaned the house. She examined Elias's account books. That was when she noticed something unusual. Several payments did not match the ranch records. She studied the figures again. Someone had been taking money from the ranch. When Nathan returned that evening, Clara showed him the books. Did you know about these? Nathan frowned. No. She pointed to the entries. These numbers don't match. Nathan sat beside her. They worked through the records together. After several minutes, Nathan's expression became serious. You were right. Clara looked at him. How much? Enough to hurt the ranch badly. Nathan leaned back. I thought Elias had been struggling because of the drought. Maybe he was. Clara pointed toward another page, but someone made it worse. Nathan studied her. You've been here less than a day. I know, and you've already found something I missed. Clara gave him a tired smile. I suppose that means I'm useful. Nathan looked at her for a moment. Yes, it was the first compliment he had given her. Something changed between them. Not love, not yet, but respect. Over the next few weeks, Clara became part of ranch life. She learned to ride. She learned which horses were gentle and which ones were difficult. She learned how to keep the household accounts. She helped Mrs. Bell preserve food for winter. The ranch hands slowly stopped treating her as a stranger. Nathan noticed all of it. He also noticed that Clara had stopped crying every night. She still missed Elias, but she was beginning to live. Then one afternoon, another letter arrived. It was addressed to Elias. Nathan opened it carefully. The letter contained a warning. Someone had been pressuring Elias to sell Morgan Ranch. The writer mentioned threats. Nathan's jaw tightened. Clara looked at him. Who sent it? Nathan read the signature. Silas Crow. Clara had heard the name. Silas owned land several miles away. He wanted the ranch? Nathan nodded. Especially the water rights. Clara remembered Elias's letters. He had mentioned refusing to sell. Nathan looked toward the distant hills. If Silas was pressuring Elias before he died, he stopped. Clara understood what he was thinking. Do you believe your brother's death wasn't an accident? Nathan did not answer immediately. I don't know. Then he looked at Clara. But I'm going to find out. That night Clara stood on the porch. The desert sky was filled with stars. Nathan joined her. For several moments neither spoke. Finally, Clara said, When I arrived here, I thought my life had ended. Nathan looked at her. She looked toward the garden Elias had prepared. I don't know what my life is anymore. Nathan's voice was quiet. You don't have to know yet. Clara turned toward him. What if I stay? Nathan hesitated. Then you'll have to understand that life here isn't easy. I didn't come here expecting easy. Nathan looked at her differently. For the first time, he was not seeing his brother's intended bride. He was seeing Clara, a woman who had traveled hundreds of miles alone, a woman who had lost the future she expected and still found the courage to stand, a woman who was beginning to make Morgan Ranch feel alive again. Nathan lowered his eyes. If you stay, I'll protect you. Clara smiled faintly. I don't need you to protect me from everything. Nathan looked back at her. Then what do you need? Clara glanced toward the dark horizon. I think I need time. Nathan nodded. You'll have it. Neither of them knew it yet, but that conversation was the beginning of a new future. Clara had arrived in Arizona, believing she was too late. She had come to marry Elias Morgan. Instead, she had arrived at a ranch filled with unanswered questions, unfinished dreams, and a grieving brother who had no idea that the woman his brother had promised to love would eventually change his life too. And somewhere beyond the mountains, Silas Crow was already making his next move. The real story was only beginning. The first winter wind arrived at Morgan Ranch before the snow. It came across the Arizona hills with a sharp coldness that seemed to creep beneath the doors and windows. Clara Whitmore stood on the porch that morning, wrapping her shawl more tightly around her shoulders as she watched the ranch hands prepare the horses. 3 months had passed since she had arrived. 3 months since she had stepped from the train, believing she was about to meet the man she had promised to marry. 3 months since Nathan Morgan had told her that Elias was dead. At first, every corner of the ranch had reminded her of Elias. His boots, his saddle, his handwriting, his favorite horse, the unfinished garden he had prepared for her. But slowly, something had changed. Clara no longer woke expecting Elias to walk through the door. She still remembered him. She still kept his letters tied with the blue ribbon. But the sharpness of her grief had softened. She had begun living instead of simply surviving. And much of that change had happened because of Nathan. Nathan never spoke about it. He would leave before sunrise and return after dark. He worked constantly. But Clara had noticed the small things. He made sure she had enough firewood. He checked the stable whenever a storm approached. He repaired the broken shutter outside her room without being asked. And whenever Clara struggled with something on the ranch, Nathan quietly appeared. He never asked for thanks. Perhaps that was why Clara had begun thinking about him more often than she wanted to admit. That morning, Nathan came toward the porch. You shouldn't be outside, he said. Clara smiled. You say that every morning. Because every morning you're outside. It's called fresh air. It's called freezing. She laughed. Nathan looked at her. For a brief moment, the hard expression he usually wore disappeared. Clara noticed. Immediately looked away. I'll have breakfast ready in a few minutes, Clara said. Nathan nodded. Then he started walking toward the barn. Wait, he stopped. Clara held out a small piece of cloth. Your sleeve. Nathan looked down. The fabric had torn. You've been working too hard. I'll fix it. You said that yesterday. I'll fix it today. Clara smiled. You always say that. Nathan looked at her. Then perhaps you should stop noticing everything. I can't. He stared at her for a second too long. Then he turned away. Clara watched him disappear into the barn. Her heart beat faster. She immediately scolded herself. Nathan was Elias's brother. She had come to this ranch because of Elias. She had no right to feel this way. At breakfast, Nathan barely spoke. Clara noticed. Are you angry with me? No. Then why won't you look at me? Nathan finally raised his eyes. Because I shouldn't. Clara frowned. Shouldn't what? Look at you like that. Silence filled the room. Clara's heart stopped. Nathan stood. I need to check the west fence. He walked away. Clara remained seated. She understood. Nathan was fighting something, and suddenly she was afraid she was fighting it too. That afternoon, Clara found him repairing a wagon wheel. Nathan? He did not look up. Yes? We need to talk. I don't think we do. I do. Nathan slowly stood. Clara faced him. You keep avoiding me. I've been busy. You've been avoiding me for weeks. Nathan sighed. I am not Elias. His expression tightened. I know. Then stop treating me like I belong to him. Nathan looked away. You came here to marry my brother. I know. You loved him. I cared about him. Nathan looked at her. What's the difference? Clara thought carefully. I loved the man I believed he would be in my life. I knew him through his letters. I dreamed about him. Nathan's voice was quiet. And me? Clara stepped closer. I know you. Nathan froze. Clara continued. I know you are stubborn. I know you work too much. I know you pretend you don't care, when you care more than anyone. Nathan looked at her. You don't know me. I know enough. Nathan shook his head. You shouldn't. Why? Because if I let myself love you, it would feel like stealing something from Elias. Clara's expression softened. You can't steal the past. Nathan looked at her. Maybe not, but you can lose the future. He had no answer. Clara walked away. Nathan watched her disappear toward the house. For the first time, he understood that avoiding her would not make his feelings disappear. It would only hurt them both. Meanwhile, the threat from Silas Crow was becoming more serious. One evening, Nathan returned from town with a packet of documents. Clara saw immediately that something was wrong. What happened? The bank rejected my loan. Why? Because someone told them Morgan Ranch is insolvent. Clara's face hardened. That's a lie. Nathan nodded. I know. Nathan placed the documents on the table. Silas. Clara looked through the papers. He is trying to make the ranch look worthless. Exactly. Then he can buy it cheaply. Nathan nodded. He wants the water rights. Clara remembered the letter they had discovered. Do you think he did this to Elias? Nathan was silent. I don't know. Clara looked at him. But you suspected? Yes. They spent the next several nights examining Elias's financial records. Clara found something important. Sales had been recorded, but never received by the ranch. She compared the dates. Then she noticed that the same days appeared in Silas Crow's records. Nathan. He leaned over the table. What? Look, she pointed to the figures. These cattle were supposedly sold. Yes, but we never received the money. Nathan stared at the page, and Silas bought cattle from the same suppliers on those dates. Clara nodded. Someone may have been stealing our cattle and selling them through another company. Nathan's face became cold. We need proof. They decided to investigate quietly. Nathan traveled to neighboring ranches. Clara questioned suppliers. They discovered that several ranchers had received unusual offers from Silas. The pattern was clear. Silas was slowly destroying Morgan Ranch. But he was careful. He left no obvious evidence. Then one evening, Nathan failed to return. Clara waited. The sun disappeared. The ranch grew dark. She walked to the porch again and again. Finally, near midnight, she heard a horse approaching. Nathan rode into the yard. He nearly fell from the saddle. Clara ran toward him. "Nathan, I'm fine." "You are not fine." He was bruised and exhausted. Clara helped him inside. "What happened?" "Two men stopped me on the road." "Who?" "I don't know." "Did they say anything?" Nathan looked at her. "They told me to leave the ranch." Clara's hands trembled. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew you'd worry." "I'm already worried." Nathan gave a tired smile. "I know." She cleaned the wound on his forehead. Nathan watched her quietly. "Why do you care so much?" Clara looked at him. "Because I love you." The words escaped before she could stop them. Nathan froze. Clara's eyes widened. She had not intended to say it. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Nathan whispered, "Say it again." Clara swallowed. "I love you." Nathan closed his eyes. For months, he had tried to deny what he felt. Now there was nowhere left to hide. He reached for her hand. "I love you too." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "But I'm afraid." "So am I. I don't want Elias to disappear." "He won't." Nathan squeezed her hand. "He'll always be part of this place." Clara nodded. "Then maybe loving you isn't betrayal." "No." Nathan looked into her eyes. "Maybe it's finally letting both of us live." The moment was interrupted by a sound outside. A horse, then another. Nathan stood immediately. He reached for his coat. Clara followed him to the porch. 3 riders stood beyond the fence. One of them called out, "Miss Whitmore." Clara recognized the voice. Silas Crow. He rode closer. "You don't belong here." Nathan stepped forward. "Leave." Silas smiled. "You have no claim to this woman." "I can speak for myself." Silas looked at her. "Your marriage contract with Elias was never completed." "I know." "Then legally, you have no reason to stay." Clara lifted her chin. "I don't need a legal reason." Silas frowned. "This ranch will belong to me soon." Nathan stepped forward. "Not while I'm alive." Silas laughed. "That's exactly what Elias said." Nathan went completely still. Clara saw it. Silas realized he had said too much. "What did you say?" Nathan asked. Silas's smile disappeared. "I said Elias was stubborn." But Nathan knew. Silas had just revealed that he had spoken to Elias before his death, perhaps much more than once. The riders turned and disappeared into the darkness. Nathan remained still. Clara touched his arm. "Nathan." He looked at her. "He knows something." Clara nodded. "We'll find out what." That night, Nathan opened a locked drawer in Elias's old desk. Inside was a final letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. Elias had written it shortly before his death. Nathan began reading. "Nathan, if you're reading this, something may have happened to me. Don't trust Silas Crow. He has been trying to take the ranch for months." Nathan's hands began shaking. Clara moved closer. The letter continued. "But there is something more important. If Clara arrives after I'm gone, don't let her feel she has to stay because of a promise I made. She deserves a life she chooses herself." Nathan looked at Clara. His eyes were wet. Elias had known. He had understood that life could change. The final line was simple. "Brother, Don't spend your whole life living for my memory. Nathan lowered the letter. For the first time since Elias died, he cried. Clara wrapped her arms around him. He held her tightly. Outside, the wind moved through the unfinished garden. Inside the house, two people who had been brought together by grief finally understood that they were allowed to choose happiness. But the danger was not over. Silas still wanted the ranch, and now Nathan and Clara knew that Elias's death might have been connected to the same man who was trying to destroy everything he had left behind. The next battle would decide not only who owned Morgan Ranch, it would decide whether Clara and Nathan could protect the future they had finally dared to imagine. Winter came hard to Morgan Ranch that year. The desert cold was nothing like the winters Clara Whitmore had known in Missouri. During the day, the sunlight could still feel warm against her face, but once the sun disappeared behind the mountains, the temperature dropped quickly. Clara stood beside the kitchen window one morning, watching frost form along the edge of the glass. Across the yard, Nathan was saddling his horse. He had barely slept. Since discovering Elias's final letter, he had become obsessed with uncovering the truth about his brother's death. The letter had confirmed what they had suspected. Silas Crow had been pressuring Elias to sell Morgan Ranch. He had threatened him. He had attempted to ruin his finances. But the letter had not revealed everything. There was one final piece missing: proof. Nathan believed Elias had hidden documents somewhere that could expose Silas. Clara believed the same. "We should search the storage building," she said when Nathan entered the kitchen. Nathan looked at her. "No. You didn't even let me finish. I know what you're going to say. You are going alone." "Yes." "Then my answer is no." Nathan sighed. "Clara, the storage building is 7 miles away. I know. There may be men watching it. I know. You could be hurt. So could you." Nathan stared at her. "You don't understand." Clara stepped closer. "I understand perfectly. You are not responsible for this. Neither are you." Nathan's expression softened. Clara continued, "Elias left this ranch to you, but he also left me a home. If someone wants to take it from us, I'm not going to sit inside the house and wait." Nathan smiled faintly. "You are impossible." "I've been told." He finally nodded. "Fine." They prepared 2 horses. Before leaving, Clara went inside and retrieved Elias's final letter. She placed it carefully inside her coat. They rode north through the cold morning. The landscape was almost completely silent. The mountains appeared gray beneath the winter sky. For hours they traveled without seeing another person. Eventually, they reached an abandoned storage building near an old mining road. Nathan dismounted. "Stay close." Clara nodded. The building was half collapsed. Inside, dust covered everything. They searched through crates, shelves, and old boxes. After nearly an hour, Clara noticed a loose wooden plank beneath an old table. "Nathan!" He came over. Together they moved the table. Beneath the floor was a small metal box. Nathan stared at it. This could be it. He opened the box. Inside were receipts, bank records, cattle sale documents, letters, and one small notebook. Clara opened the notebook. The handwriting belonged to Elias. She read several pages. Elias had been documenting Silas's activities. He had discovered that several cattle stolen from Morgan Ranch were being sold through companies connected to Silas. There was also a list of names, witnesses, ranchers, bankers, people who could prove what Silas had been doing. Nathan looked at Clara. "We have him." Before Clara could answer, they heard horses outside. Nathan immediately closed the box. "Someone's here." They stepped toward the window. 4 riders stood outside. One of them was Silas Crow. Nathan's jaw tightened. Silas shouted, "Hand over the box." Nathan looked at Clara. "Get behind me." "No, Clara, I said no." Silas dismounted. "You should have stayed away from my business." Nathan stepped outside. This is not your business. Silas laughed. Everything on that ranch will be mine. Nathan held the box tightly. You'll never get it. Silas looked toward Clara. You think he can protect you? Clara stepped beside Nathan. I don't need him to. Silas stared at her. You've made a mistake. Clara answered. Coming to Arizona was the best mistake I ever made. Nathan looked at her. Despite the danger, a small smile appeared on his face. Silas's men moved forward. Nathan and Clara turned their horses toward the mountains. They rode hard. The trail became narrow. Snow began falling. Behind them, the riders followed. Clara's horse stumbled once, but she regained control. Nathan stayed beside her. Keep going. I am. They reached a steep ravine. The path ahead was blocked by fallen rocks. Nathan looked around. There was another trail leading toward an abandoned cabin. This way. They turned. The cabin was barely standing. They entered and barred the door. The horses were hidden behind the structure. Outside, the wind grew stronger. Snow covered their tracks. For the moment, they were safe. Clara sat beside the small fireplace. Nathan knelt nearby and began lighting a fire. The flames slowly grew. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, Clara opened Elias's notebook. He knew. Nathan looked at her. He knew Silas was dangerous. Nathan stared into the fire. I wish he'd told me. Maybe he was trying to protect you. He should have trusted me. Clara gently touched his shoulder. He loved you. Nathan nodded. I know. The silence returned. Then Nathan said, Clara. She looked at him. I need to tell you something. Her heart began beating faster. Nathan looked nervous. I've spent months trying not to feel what I feel. Clara said nothing. I told myself it was wrong. He took a breath. You came here because of Elias. I know. And I believed that meant you could never belong with me. Clara moved closer. Nathan continued, but then I realized something. What? You didn't fall in love with me because I was Elias's brother. He looked into her eyes. You fell in love with me because I'm me. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Nathan reached for her hand. I love you, Clara. She smiled through her tears. I love you too. For a moment the storm outside seemed very far away. They remained close beside the fire. There was no need for dramatic promises. They already knew. When morning came, the storm had weakened. The snow had covered their tracks. Nathan and Clara rode toward town. They arrived exhausted, but determined. Nathan immediately went to the sheriff. He presented Elias's documents. At first, the sheriff was skeptical, but the records contained names and transactions that could be verified. Within days, several ranchers came forward. They confirmed Silas had been buying stolen cattle. A banker admitted that Silas had pressured him to refuse Nathan's loan. A former ranch hand confessed that he had been paid to move Morgan cattle without Nathan's knowledge. Silas's entire scheme began collapsing. But one final question remained. What had happened to Elias? The investigation revealed that Silas had met Elias shortly before his death. Silas had threatened him. However, there was not enough evidence to prove that Silas directly caused the accident. The sheriff could not charge him with murder. But Silas was charged for fraud, theft, and illegal cattle operations. Morgan Ranch was safe. For the first time in months, Nathan allowed himself to breathe. Spring arrived. The desert changed. The dry land softened beneath the warmer sun. And the small garden Elias had started finally bloomed. Clara stood among the flowers one afternoon. Nathan approached. I have something for you. She turned. He held a small ring. It was simple, silver, nothing extravagant. Clara stared at it. He smiled nervously. I don't want you to marry me because Elias died. She shook her head. I won't. I don't want you to stay because you feel you owe this ranch something. I don't. I want you to stay because you choose me. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I do. Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger. She looked at it. It fits. I hoped it would. Clara laughed. Then she became quiet. Do you think Elias would be angry? Nathan looked toward the garden. No. How do you know? Because he wanted us to live. Clara nodded. They stood together among the flowers. Months later they married beneath the Arizona sky. The ceremony was small. There were ranch hands, Belle, a few neighboring families. Their horses stood nearby. Clara wore a simple ivory dress. Nathan wore a dark suit. When he took her hand, Clara remembered the train station. She remembered stepping down from the train carrying her suitcase. She remembered searching the crowd for Elias. She remembered the devastating words Nathan had spoken. She remembered believing her future had ended. But standing beside Nathan, she understood something. Her future had not ended. It had simply changed. After the ceremony, Clara visited Elias's grave. She carried a single wildflower. She placed it beside the headstone. I came here because of you, she whispered. She smiled through tears. But I found my own life, she added. She stood silently for a moment. Thank you for giving me a reason to come. Then she walked back toward Nathan. He waited at the bottom of the hill. He did not ask what she had said. He simply held out his hand. Clara took it. Years passed. Morgan Ranch became successful again. The cattle herds grew. The fences were repaired. The old house was renovated, and the garden became the most beautiful place on the property. Clara and Nathan had children. Their laughter filled the ranch. One evening, years after the wedding, Clara stood on the porch watching their youngest son ride a small horse across the field. Nathan came beside her. She leaned against his shoulder. Do you remember the day I arrived? She asked. Nathan smiled. I remember, he said. I thought my life was over, she went on. I know, Nathan replied. She looked at him. I came here expecting to marry your brother, she added. And instead? Clara smiled. I found you. Nathan kissed her forehead. The sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains. The garden moved gently in the evening wind. Clara looked across the ranch. The place that had once felt like a graveyard of someone else's dreams had become her home. And she finally understood the strange truth of her journey. She had not arrived too late. She had arrived exactly when she was supposed to. Elias had been the dream that brought her west, but Nathan had become the love that taught her how to live again. And sometimes, the greatest love story is not the one we plan. It is the one life writes for us after everything we thought we wanted has changed.